Hello from Dream Vacations. We look forward to helping you plan a cruise vacation where you can race your friends on the top deck while cruising the oceans, or you can compete with your friends in style with virtual reality racing on board. If cruising is not for you, we can send you to Germany, where you can challenge the ring, or whisk you off to Abu Dhabi to take on the world's fastest roller coaster in Ferrari World. Whatever your dream vacation may be, let Dream Vacations handle the details and make that dream into a reality. Visit us at www.travelwithanangel.com.
Monza saw a feel-good story unravel as Christian Gritzko turned his season around in spectacular style. Fighting current champion Overbay for the lead, eventually the Canadian came out on top and got to claim the victory. But other than the action on track, the points battle has also become equally fascinating. Unger may still be one of the fastest drivers, but Eric Harmon has been steadily consistent. The Ring will write the next chapter in this tale, and we'll see how it all unfolds as we get ready to watch round 4 of the PRL Radical Racing Series. And you'll see it all live here on the Global SimRacing Channel and the iRacing Esports Network. Hi, I'm Joe Peak, and with me in the booth is Nick Schmeg. Behind the scenes is our director, Sean Crackers Ambrose, and he's using cameras provided by Dougie Beard. Nick, the Nürburgring GP course sadly hasn't seen F1 in a few years, but at least it's going to get some high downforce action today.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said there, Joe, Formula One's German Grand Prix has since moved to Hockenheim, but despite that shift, there's been a very heavy motorsports presence here in Nürburgring, Germany. Most notably with sports car events and also the famed Nordschleife, of course. But tonight, the PRL Radical Racing Series tackles on the Grand Prix course here at the Ring. It's a 16-turn circuit spread over 5 kilometers or about 3.2 miles. Despite it not quite living up to the size and prominence of its older brother, Green Hell, many characteristics do transfer over, such as elevation change and fast but technical turns. That elevation change here provides quite a bit of banking for the attack zones, creating a nice German rhythm and flow for this track. All of the corners and sectors of this track are challenging and unique in their own ways, and to see that better, allow me to send you to the front stretch located just 2 hours west of Frankfurt for the GSRC lap guide.
Alright, we've got Stefan Schlacker and the GSRC Radical, so let's do a lap around the Nürburgring. Down into the Haug Hook, expect most pass attempts to happen here. You've got to be careful though, because it's not uncommon for drivers to tangle with one another as their racing lines cross in this very sharp bend. From there, it leads into the Mercedes Arena. This car is known for requiring a gentle right foot out of slow corners, and with this section being pretty much nothing but that, it's going to be a big challenge. Patience will be key, or else you'll find yourself facing the wrong way. Out of the chicane and back onto the main circuit, you're now flying towards Valvoline. The downforce the Radical produces makes this a pretty fast corner, so there isn't a lot of braking on the way in. It's best to hug the left side on the exit because up next is Ford, which is pretty important to the lap. Get a bad run off the bend and it's going to hurt you on your way down to Dunlop. This hairpin sees less passing than you'd think, but most times when it does, it's because someone failed to keep their speed up on the way down the hill. Nothing really special about executing this one. Just square off your exit, get the power down without wheel spin, and be on your way. However, the Schumacher S is going to be a hairy proposition. You might need a little lift to keep yourself safe, but you gotta watch out for the curves because this car doesn't usually play nice with them. Then there's Michelin, which if you can withstand the wake of the car ahead, offers a great place for overtakes. Just don't get lulled into drifting wide because you've immediately got to switch sides for Bilstein. This is one of the most important turns on the circuit because you'll climb back uphill into the tightest chicane of the lap. Many drivers will try passes into here, but if you find yourself too wide, it's going to be real bad news. Once again, stay off the curbs, then you've got a short blast at Coca-Cola. This right-hand hairpin takes you back to the pit straight, so do your best not to hesitate on the throttle. Everyone's going to be trying to set up an opportunity to overtake back into the first corner, but if you've kept it together, you've now finished a lap around the Nürburgring. You can see a lap around the Nürburgring, and you can tell this series, the organizers want to keep it going because they looked at the schedule and they decided to put a ring on it. But this series, the PRL Radical Racing Series, is brought to you by Dream Vacations. Dream Vacations provides completely customizable vacation packages from your door to your destination and back. Go to travelwithanangel.com and let us worry about the details. Big thanks to Dream Vacations for coming on board to sponsor this season. Let's take a look at the championship, though. I mentioned it a little bit in the pre-race, and well, to show you how tight it is up at the top of the drivers, only 5 points between Unger and Harmon now, and Overbay only 6 points back, McLaughlin 7 back. So look at that, the top 4, 7 points separating them. They've each had their problems. Harmon really the most consistent of the bunch. You've got 2 drivers tied down 17 points behind Unger all the way in 5th. Let's go to the team's championship. Nick, what's that looking like over there?
Well, yeah, you just saw how tight it was over in the drivers' championship fight, and it is tight as well in the team's standings, but not for the top of the board. Left side drive racing, they're really starting to scoot away up there, and they have a 42-point lead over the Crash for Cash team that moved up into 2nd. They're followed by Blown Tranny Racing, who moved up into the top 5 and also into the top 3. 2 points further back, another 2 points further back, the Alpine Stars Geodesic Racing, the absence of Padovani, and the results by Overbay have hurt them recently. And Banana Split Racing, they have fallen to 5th, but from 2nd on to 5th, just 14 points separate them.
Of course, also, in case we have any new viewers, let's take a look at those for this event. Now, as we mentioned, we're in round 4 out of 10. The setups on these Radicals are open, but they've restricted the fuel cell compared to what the real Radicals run. That means you can expect at least one scheduled pit stop for fuel during this 45-minute race. They also have an incident cap. That means that the drivers will be disqualified if they run over those 24 incidents. That includes driving off into the grass or hitting the wall, spinning, or hitting another car. So keep an eye out on that. They have no spare car as well. There's nothing to save you if you get damaged. You can't just duck in and hop in the spare. So you will have to get that repaired if it's hindering you too much. Big thank you goes out to iRacing this season yet again for bringing the PRL Radical Racing Series onto IESN. Of course, if you want to see the whole season show up in your YouTube feed, you should subscribe. All you got to do that is hit the big red button that says subscribe on iRacing's YouTube page. So once again, thanks goes out to the iRacing team for bringing us on board. Taking a look at the qualifying right now, David Unger picking up where he left off, going to be on the pole again if he keeps this up. But Eric Luke has been awful close to him. Where he sits now, less than a 10th behind Unger, is about where he sat in the warm-up, Nick. And you talk about a driver that is overdue a win. Eric Luke, he can't catch a break this season.
Yeah, he definitely can't. His best finish was in round 2 at Road Atlanta, and ironically, that was a race that David Unger won. So this already looking very similar to that race down in Georgia, but we'll have to see. Still a bit of time left in qualifying for drivers to get their times in. Overbay in 3rd, and you mentioned Eric Harmon and his consistency this year. He's in 4th right now.
You see Eric Luke on screen. Harmon's actually caught up behind David A. Bear right now, and I'm not sure if they're working together, if he's just having his qualifying interrupted. You see him, he's just now getting by A. Bear, who's to the left of him, so this is going to bother both of their laps unless David breaks early. He does a little bit, but it compromises the line for Harmon. Not sure if he's terribly going to be happy about that. Still got 5.5 minutes left in the qualifying for this event. Another driver we saw have a bit of heartbreak besides Eric Luke is Curlin Andrew. He sits in 11th for the third race in a row. He ran out of fuel before the finish line. This one, the closest of all the races he's run, but it still cost him a podium, Nick.
Yeah, absolutely. The fuel calculations have not gone well for Curlin Andrew in the last couple races, but hopefully that banana split bright yellow radical can make it to the end on this race. Yeah, that's a tough break, tough pill to swallow for him, is for sure, especially 3 weeks in a row to kick off the season like that.
Texas driver has a little bit of work to do to get him farther up the order, but starting within the top 10 would be a decent way to get himself a good finish here if he can just carry that on. Now, one thing I've noticed as we've raced at this track with a variety of different cars, Nick, is that it seems like passing's actually relatively difficult. I mean, what do you think for these radicals here today? Is that going to continue?
Well, the one thing about the Nürburgring, the Grand Prix course, is that there aren't too many tight turns that come after those high braking zones that you often see for passing. A lot of these turns are kind of mid to high speed, and they're kind of wide as well. It creates a bit of an awkward situation for passing. I think we might see a bit of a similar situation tonight as well in the radicals. I don't see too many fantastic passing spots on track. Obviously a couple. You think down here in turn 1 as well. For one of them, you see Harmon go through there.
Riding on board with McManus as well. He hasn't put a time in quite yet. He's got a little bit left on the clock to do so. This second lap, again, did not count. Those off tracks are clearly hurting McManus. So Gunderson also crossing the line, and that one also not counting for the number 33, the Canadian. Got a bit of a surprise podium. He was the one that overtook for that third place, right with just a few hundred feet to go for Curlin Andrew. This is Owen McLaughlin sitting in 7th. That last lap, not his fastest. That 52.8 will stay put. And actually, he gets bumped down to 8th by the very car behind him that we just saw on screen, Christopher Richards. Overbay on a good lap. Not a good enough lap. 51.7 for him. He'll stay on the second row. Let's take a look at Cristelli. Last race was his very first race in this series. Garnered himself a top 10. Finished on the lead lap. Now his goal probably needs to set his sights a little bit higher. And qualifying, he sits in 10th. This last lap, unfortunately, also going to be nil for him.
Yeah, because last week at Monza, Cristelli had a great debut. He was caught up in the action quite a bit as we take a look at A-Bear on screen. But Cristelli really fought through a lot of problems that a lot of drivers, I think, would have retired the car from.
Yeah, I'm amazed that he did as well as he did, especially considering the damage that he was dealing with. Watching A-Bear, he sits in 19th, second to last in the qualifying. He's going to stay there because he also seems to have trouble with the off tracks. You know, seeing all these off tracks in the qualifying, I'm starting to wonder about that incident limit.
Yeah, it's not a track that often gets talked about for being heavy on the off tracks. It's one that I've always struggled with a bit. A couple turns coming out of the arena section of the track, especially with off tracks here. Yeah, I think these radicals might be interesting to see them struggle with that tonight.
Watching Mark File. Currently sits P5, and now we've switched to Overbay, who's just finishing another lap. Again, he's trying to get onto the front row. He's a 10th off of Eric Luke, 2/10 off of our pole sitter. Very doable to find that time. As he crosses the line, he doesn't find the time this time. Still slower at a 53.1. Cristelli taking a lot of curb through that final chicane as he comes up to Coca-Cola. Let's watch him across the line, but I'm also keeping half an eye on David Unger, our pole sitter. He could yet move the goalpost, and Cristelli, unfortunately, is not able to get that time down. This is our pole sitter provisionally across the line at 51.5, still 3/10 slower than his fastest at that 51.2. Harmon also not able to improve. Looking down the order, not seeing too many drivers up at the top, getting close to finishing the lap, but the checkered flag now comes out. David Hebert, his last lap, unfortunately not going to send him any higher on the timing screen. So we go to Gunderson, sitting in 12th. His fastest is a 54 flat. He crosses the line, it's a 54.3. All right, second place driver, Eric Luke. He's been on the pole before, but he's never won a race here in the Radical Series, and he's going to abandon his lap. Right behind him is Overbay, though, third place driver. This could be another one that could overtake Unger. Let's see what he's got. Comes around Coca-Cola. The geodesic racing car has been pretty good this season, and it's not a faster lap for him. I think Harmon is our last opportunity to try and overtake our leader. Everybody else very, very far down unless they have a real miracle of pace in quali. The 617 car streaking its way towards the NGK chicane, braking hard. One of the tightest and slowest corners on the track. He's clean through. This is looking like a good one. Again, that fastest time that they are aiming for is a 51.209. Harmon crosses the line. Is this going to be it? 52.5, just shy for him. Does not improve. I think that's going to be it for our qualifying. So let's go through our starting grid here today for round 4 of the PRL Radical Racing Series. David Unger puts it on the pole yet again. Eric Luke starts in P2 with Michael Overbay starting in 3rd. Then Eric Harmon on the outside of row 2 starting 4th. Mark Feil will be P5, and then Christian Gritzko, last round's winner, will flank him in 6th. Christopher Richards starts 7th, and Owen McLaughlin starts 8th. Curlin Andrew was not able to improve on that 9th place. He'll start from there when the green drops. David Cristelli, newcomer, will round out our top 10.
Row 6 is going to go to Tyler Gore and Matthew Gunderson in the 33 machine. Matt Miles is going to be right behind them in the 14, with Rem Ambrosi to his outside in 14th. 15th place goes to Daniel Barnett, and they're going to be followed by Danny Duchesne, Andy Spicer in the 22 car, Phil Guillaumin, David Hebert, and Julian Huxley rounding out the top 20. And then looks like we have 5 drivers that did not set a qualifying lap. And no, that is 4 drivers. I can count, right? That's going to be Paul Wildridge, Ronald McManus, William Lee, and Leif Peterson rounding out this 24 car field.
All right, so as we wait for them to line up, hopefully we can get through turn 1 clean. Hal Cook is incredibly sharp. In the past, we've seen drivers tangle, we've seen big pileups, and then sometimes everybody just cycles through clean. What are we going to get today? Most of the cars already out there on the front stretch, making sure they've got their setups right. As we mentioned so far, Unger still our leader. Harmon trying to give chase. Michael Overbay, our current champion, finally had a bad race. And even then, he still put 22 points on the board. Just didn't finish how he probably would have wanted to. He could yet still come back to the lead. In fact, a number of drivers could find themselves at the top when this race is over, with how tight it is between the top four. Just Ronald McManus and Leif Peterson, the last two to find themselves their spot on the grid. Then we get to go racing for 45 minutes here today in the PRL Radical Racing Series. Beautiful day out in the Nürburgring and out in Germany. We'll get to the weather a little bit later with it getting so close to the start. I don't want us to get too distracted here, but obviously you can see the sky nice and blue. A little bit of cloud cover here and there to help cool the track down from time to time. McManus and Peterson definitely taking their time to get out onto the grid. Hopefully they're not starting from pit lane. They both put lap times in qualifying. All right, that's it. Engines start to rev. Lights are up, and the green flag is out here at the Nürburgring. David Unger with a fantastic start. Overbay with a horrible start, though. Eric Luke slots into second. Harmon manages to get past on the inside of Overbay. Overbay's late on the brakes, though, to try and get the spot back. A little bit of three wide back there. Some cars getting tipped around. Otherwise, mostly clean.
Yeah, only problem we had there looked like it was Danny Duchesne and Andy Spicer, but nothing too major other than that contact between those two. A couple cars off through the arena section as well.
And in that, we missed that Eric Luke had managed to get into the lead. He kept it around the outside into the Mercedes arena and slipped in front of David Unger. But the last time we saw this, Unger chased him down and took it back away by the end of the race. They're already putting a gap between themselves and last race winner Christian Gritzko. 8/10 between second and third.
And you can already see as they go through Dunlop there, David Unger already trying to chase down Eric Luke for that lead. He's got that slipstream going up the hill now.
Out of the Schumacher S towards Michelin. They continue to extend the gap over Gritzko on this first lap. This is one of those spots you can sometimes see passes, but it seems to be mostly single file as they come towards the end of this first lap here at the Nürburgring.
We'll see how close David Unger gets through this chicane right here. This isn't the WEC layout. This is the Grand Prix course, so it has that really tight chicane.
See everybody getting woed up. Not much side-by-side action. David Barnett manages to get by Paul Wildridge. That was for P13. But as they come through Coca-Cola, Luke, now your new leader, crossing the line. Bad exit for Unger onto the front stretch. He's in second place. And Gritzko has closed down. He's gotten by Overbay up into third. Gritzko started this race in sixth. He is off like a shot.
He's got that momentum from his big win last week in Monza. He'd love to keep that trend of winning all the European tracks going.
It's amazing, Nick, how we talk about confidence being a thing in racing. You think, oh no, it's got to be down to skill, right? But every time I see a driver do good, it's like something switches over in their brain.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You can see already, like you mentioned, started that race back in the sixth, and we saw how conservative the start was up front too. So he was very aggressive through all of that.
Number 28 still trailing Unger, who finds himself a little bit of space between himself and the Canadian. So as he continues to hound our leader, right on board with the number 28, looking to see if Unger will have a go. A little bit of a defensive move from Eric Luke down into Michelin this time, but he comes back to the racing line.
Yeah, Eric Luke definitely starting to feel that pressure. You can see him make that defensive line work for him, and even just his corner entry as well, as Unger's taking a peek here.
He left the door open, and Unger used the slipstream to good effect. Both of them getting it woed up for the chicane, but back to the lead after losing it on lap one. David Unger finds himself on the top spot. That side-by-side action has brought Gritzko in closer, as well as Overbay. They come down the front stretch. This could be an opportunity for Eric to take it back to him. And indeed, he looks to the inside somewhat. Is this a serious attempt? Nope. He's going to break a little bit early. Stays in P2. Both of them a little wide at the apex, but making it through. Why don't we take a glance at the McLaughlin incident early on, now that we've got a little bit of a lull here. I believe we've got that replay spooled. This was, let's see, yeah, the arena section that you were talking about here, Nick. You caught this. I didn't actually get to see this one.
Yeah, back on lap 1, I just got loose. It looks like he went off into the runoff area. I don't see any contact with anyone else. I think it just kind of snapped on him. And track is so flat through there, so it's hard to get all that grip, especially on these cold tires early in the race.
Yeah, that's a real shame. I mean, credit to him, though. He waited patiently to try to cycle back in.
Yeah.
Could have caused many more problems had he tried to, unfortunately, surprise someone. Yeah, no contact there. Turn live. Unger still leads Eric Luke. Has extended the gap to about half a second. In fact, all of the top four are just about equidistant from one another now. Making their way up towards the chicane one more time. This gives us a chance to check in on the mid-pack. Let's go to P8, where David Cristelli, since the start in P10, has gained 2 positions. He's ahead of Christopher Richards, but he's also giving chase on Curlin Andrew, up in 7th ahead of him.
Yeah, Cristelli with a great start, like you mentioned, gaining 2 spots. Curlin Andrew, another one with a great start. He also is up to 7th from 9th, and Christopher Richards, that car behind him, that was the reciprocate of that, because he started 7th and he's back to 9th now. So
somebody's got to lose positions when others gain them. As we ride on board with Curlin, looking back at Cristelli. Is this going to be a cleaner race for the New Englander? So far, it's looking pretty good. His last lap was his fastest at a 53.2. Clearly getting pretty comfortable in the car. Down out of Ford, they fly towards the Dunlop hairpin. And pretty much what we were talking about before the race started, Nick, that as Christopher Richards nearly has an off through the hairpin, was just off screen, very wide through Dunlop.
Let's take a look inside the cockpit here for Christopher Richards. This was a nice save for him.
Wow, that was some serious understeer. That car was, I mean, the hands were cranked and it just was not gripping. Well, that brings us to what I mentioned about the track temperature, 91 degrees currently out there on the surface. There's another error from Christopher Richards there into the NGK chicane. But it's very cool air temperatures.
Yeah, pretty cool air temperature and hotter than average track temperature, so can't be too many clouds in the sky right now for it being partly cloudy. But yeah, that's going to make it a little bit more of a handful for these guys. Less grip, and we already talked about the struggle of passing at this track. That's going to give them all the more challenge here.
Yeah, it seems like that's very much coming to fruition, because most drivers, I mean, look at the gaps that we're seeing. If anyone's close to anybody, it's about half a second, and very few are closer than that. Oh, and Gritzko getting awful close to Eric Luke, looking for second place. He had a run out of the Mercedes arena, but couldn't do anything with it into Valvoline.
Yeah, Luke had a terrible Mercedes arena section for him. That car was a handful, like we just said. The track temperature and just the sliding around in these cars that he was struggling with, could not get any kind of grip underneath that 09 machine, and Gritzko ate that gap up in a hurry.
Well, the gap came back in a hurry. You saw through the Schumacher S's, it looks like the wake is just a nightmare at this track for these cars.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's exactly right, especially when we'll see them come up through the chicane here as well. It's another great example of that.
Braking hard. Unger still your leader. You can see he's pulled away about a second and a half ahead of Luke. And Gritzko, just despite the long straight, he stays about 7/10 behind. Can't seem to gun down Eric Luke.
And that Coca-Cola turn for him, a little bit of a wobble there from Gritzko. We've mentioned so many times this season that his car, he really likes to have those looser setups, and he made it work finally last week at Monza, but that car might not be the steadiest to drive here on these hotter conditions. He's got a mirror full of Overbay behind him.
Yeah, I have to imagine that Overbay is going to want that third place back. Just can't get the traction down out of the Mercedes arena, so despite getting awful close to the gearbox of Gritzko, still finding himself with a very difficult proposition to try and get onto the podium. Looking at 9th place, Gunderson, who started this in 12th, has gained 2 positions. He's up to 10th. Now he's looking for a 3rd. That's Christopher Richards ahead of him. Remember, we were watching Richards earlier. Seems to be struggling with the handling of his car. Just can't find grip on the front tires. Continues to fall backwards, now into the clutches of the 33.
Yeah, falling backwards indeed after starting 7th. And Gunderson, as a driver, being able to move forward. He's had a good start to this race. Started back in that 12th position, made his way into the top 10, and looking for 9th now. See if he can pick up any kind of slipstream. Oh, and a slide for Richards. That will make that easy for Gunderson.
This has been a day to forget for the number 49 car. That was all driver error. He gets it going, and he's down in 11th. Tyler Gore also managed to come through, get himself into the top 10. Meanwhile, look at this little battle. This is Miles right on top of Richards, but he gets checked up. Wildridge can't do anything with it as well. This is becoming something of a truly train. Behind them even, Rem Ambrosi. Surprised to see him as far back as he is.
These guys all nose to tail right now. This passing has been difficult today, but we'll see if they can make it work. Matt Miles looking underneath Richards into turn 1. Taking a peek, and he's going to lose it himself down there on that low groove.
Turns it completely around. I think he managed to avoid the Armco. Whips it back around. Can we maybe get an onboard of his replay? It was a valiant effort. He was deep on the brakes. Thought maybe he was going to pull this off. He was even given space by the 49. Got a little greedy with it.
Slippery conditions out there for the Colorado driver.
Meanwhile, let's go back to 5th. Eric Harmon. He's got Mark Feil behind him. And don't forget Curlin Andrew. Still in that 7th spot. He hasn't gained any spots since we last looked at him, but he's definitely cut down the gap to those ahead.
And Feil there in the middle.
We've got to go to Overbay. Overbay's on the attack right now, and he's to the inside of Christian Gritzko. Up into Coca-Cola. Gritzko hangs it around the outside. He carries his momentum well. And the number 28 is going to try to make Overbay work as hard as he possibly can to peel this podium spot away from him. Overbay deep onto the brakes, but look at the over-under. It'll switch back in favor of Michael as it turns left into the Mercedes arena. Has Gritzko finally got to give it up? Yes, he does. Both cars locking the tires up into the corner. The heat is on.
Gritzko's fighting back, though. He didn't lose any ground, staying in touch with him. Not going to take a peek to the inside yet. Let's see what kind of run he gets down here in a Dunlop, though. Oh, onto the curbs, and gonna lose it.
Gritzko with a critical error. There goes Harmon. There goes File. And even Andrew going to manage to get by him before all is said and done. One small mistake, and Gritzko falls to 7th.
He's fortunate that wasn't into the wall either, because that was a good save once he got off into the grass.
Disappointment for him. He's got a lot of work to do, and now he is very much in the thick of traffic. Well, this is great news for Overbay, but that battle was costly. He is now 4.5 seconds behind Eric Luke. So in all this, the battle between Unger and Luke up at the top has closed back in. Remember, I mentioned it was about 1.5 seconds some minutes ago. Luke's closed it down. It's under a second, and they haven't caught traffic or anything. This is raw pace from the 09.
We talked about how deserving he's been of a win recently. Just can't quite get up there, and this is playing out nicely for him so far.
He's only had one podium so far this season. That was at Road Atlanta in round 2. He finished 2nd behind Unger. I'm sure he'd not like to repeat that today. He's keeping the number 19 honest. And Unger hasn't been without his mistakes, so something could unfold. But the pit window has now officially opened because Wildridge has taken to the pits. He's our first stopper.
And you mentioned Road Atlanta being the only podium for Eric Luke, also the only race he finished on the lead lap in, so he's definitely trying to put together some good finishes if he can't get that win as well.
He spun out of 3rd place in the carousel twice at Watkins Glen the first round, and then he got turned around on the very first lap when he was hit from behind, I think from Rem. So we go to the battle between Andrew and Gritzko. You could see Gritzko's got the car back underneath him. And actually, did he fend him off? Was there an attack? Because Gritzko apparently was side by side not long ago. He's got a good run here. This is up to the chicane. Stays behind, though, that banana split car. Ooh, and this actually slows up Cristelli behind them. Surprised at how much both cars slowed up. That could have been a missed opportunity. Gritzko was less than a car length behind, but elected to stay in the tire tracks of the number 12.
Yeah, I think that was a missed opportunity. I think Gritzko had the speed to get around him. He was tucked up completely underneath the rear end of Andrew. The front part of Gritzko's car was completely underneath the rear wing of Andrew there going into that chicane.
Bright yellow car of Andrew goes a little wide through turn 1, but not too harmful. It does give Gritzko a little bit of a whiff of a chance. But this is a slow bit of corners. Ooh, could he get the run off of the Mercedes arena? He's trying for it. There's just not much braking into Valvoline. A slight defensive move from Andrew. This could be the spot where he wants, the spot where he gave away his 3rd place. Nice run off the corner. This is looking very good for Gritzko, Nick.
Yeah, but he's going to have to keep that pace up because Andrew's going to peek to the inside a little bit. Took a bit of a defensive line, holds him off for now. Oh, but look at this run out of the turn and up the hill for Gritzko up into Schumacher.
A little deep, but at least holds on to the position. Gritzko certainly applying immense pressure. He knows he's got to hustle if he wants a chance to get back where he was. And lap by lap, it slips through his fingers more and more. Last time he elected not to make a pass up to the chicane here ahead. This time, I don't think he'll even have the chance to look at a pass. He is so far back.
He's able to close the gap a little bit, but like you said, Oh, it got a little wobble out of the chicane as well. Into Coca-Cola. Later apex for him, trying to diamond off the corner. Just can't quite make too much headway on that gap.
That looked like a very good run. Look how close behind he is. They're coming up to turn 1. This is one of the heaviest braking zones on the track. He's got a nose to the inside. Andrew doesn't defend. Could we see him hold him off when it switches back to the left? He's trying for it. Gritzko's gonna make him work hard for it, almost banging wheels now into the technical section. Another left-hand turn, and Gritzko just can't get through.
Fantastic racing from Curl and Andrew. We've seen him be fast this year, but we haven't seen him involved in too many battles. Another opportunity here for Gritzko to the inside. He's got to make it stick, though, because it's going to switch back in Andrew's favor. I think he's going to get it done.
Wow! It's been a long time since I've seen a pass started into Valvoline, let alone be successful. Christian Gritzko into 6. This has allowed David Cristelli to get right up behind them. He could maybe be a wrench in the works, especially if Andrew tries to attack him back. They come out of the Schumacher S. Andrew not quite close enough. Cristelli also a little too far behind.
Yeah, Cristelli's gotten a front row seat for this entire battle. He knows how they like to run with each other. So that's definitely going to come into play to help him. He's just got to get up there.
Bad exit out of Bilstein for Curl and Andrew. Here comes Cristelli. He's going to use his slipstream to close in, but he runs out of straightaway.
Yeah, I think Andrew's got to be more concerned with Cristelli behind him. Cristelli going to take a peek to the inside. Not going to make it work there. Andrew came down to cut him off. Back onto the front stretch, and Andrew holds down the position for now, but it looks like a decent run for Cristelli as well.
Curbs in the chicane certainly did not agree with Andrew. He looked awful slow through there. And now they've got lap traffic in the form of pitters. This is Christopher Richards, who just came out, tries to make his car invisible through the hairpin, but unfortunately it's going to hold up both Andrew and Cristelli.
I think that caught him off guard there. I think that kind of took their breath away at the last second.
Oh, that would be a neat onboard from the lapped car. Richards looking back as the car suddenly just overwhelmed him. Looks like we got the replay pulled up here.
Remember Richards recovering from a spin earlier on.
Here it is. Comes into the corner. Tries to... Whoa! Whew. Gritzko was awful close to him. As we come back live. So that frees up Christian Gritzko. He's now got to chase down Mark Feil, who's P5. But it's nearly 5 seconds up to the next car to get himself into a top 5.
And Mark Feil not concerned about defense at all right now, because he's in a close battle with Eric Harmon for 4th.
Very close battle. Harmon, who found himself with a nice little podium last round, taking 2nd place, is now barely trying to hold on to a top 5, and Unger's got a problem. In fact, that problem is Eric Luke. Overtook him into the first corner. Let's take a look at the replay.
This was an aggressive move.
And Luke just straight up mugged him. He got a good run off the turn. No defense from the leader Unger, the then leader Unger. And Luke slipped through the door. Well, this has been one of the strongest performances we've seen out of Eric all season. Can he capitalize, though, when they come to the pit stops? Can he stay ahead of David Unger?
David Unger's had his fair share of pit strategy this season already, so he's got to be pretty experienced in it. That being said, he's got to still be able to jump Luke with a stop.
And they have pulled themselves away from Overbay. Actually, they've kept themselves about 4.5 seconds from Overbay. They haven't extended it. Overbay has closed in maybe a few tenths. Some of that could be put down to the battling they've had. And Curlin Andrew. All right, 20 minutes left to go. Did Curlin take enough fuel this time? He's been in and out, but he is our highest pitter at this point. Interestingly, it was 21 seconds, where others were running 13-second stops. Oh, and Andrew's pulling over. What's going on? Why has he stopped?
Oh, boy.
He takes a tow. Mysterious issues for Curlin Andrew. We'll have to find out later on what went down as we jump back to 4th place. Harmon and File still going at it. The last lap and a half since we last looked at it. It is down to 4.5 seconds from Gritzko to File. About 0.4 of a second have been chopped off by the 28 on this 777.
You can see Harmon taking a little bit of a different line there, trying to break that draft.
Stays with him. File through the Dunlop curve up towards the Schumacher S. This is where a lot of drivers have been having a hard time withstanding the buffeting air of the car ahead.
Got trouble with Ronald McManus just ahead of him, off the track slightly. And this actually involved David Unger.
Oh no! So Unger's still in second, but he's lost a lot of time.
Leaders were making their way through a lot of heavy traffic, and I thought they had made it through completely fine. Apparently not.
So let's watch this one more time. And this looked like just a simple miscommunication because he didn't pull all the way over to the racing line until late. Oh no, he broke early. McManus.
Yeah, really early.
Oh, poor David Unger. So how much damage did that give Unger? Overbay's cut it down to 0.6 of a second now.
He's got a little bit of right front damage, it looks like, from that, but not too bad. Yeah, you can definitely see it.
And the bad news is Overbay is definitely in a championship fight with Unger here, so he's going to want to keep Overbay behind him because those points gained, if they don't allow Overbay to overtake him, will certainly get him incredibly close.
Much of a factor that damage becomes for Unger as well. With Overbay, he's going to have some slipstream from it.
Jumping down in the mid-pack, the other banana split car of Danny Duchesne, who's still running, is ahead of Rem Ambrosi. Now, Ambrosi is another driver who's new to this series and has certainly shown some pace. One of the invasion from the Australia-New Zealand club. His qualifying this time was absolutely horrid compared to what we saw places like Watkins Glen, where he took a podium. He's down in 11th. He's gained from that 14th place qualifying, but he's still squabbling with Danny Duchesne just ahead of him. In fact, taking a look at some of our hard chargers of the race. Oh, and one of our top drivers are in. Curlin Andrew before this was our highest pitter. He unfortunately left for mysterious reasons. What about the 777 of Mark File?
File comes in. That's going to put That's going to put Gritzko back up into the top 5, and it looks like Andrew has rejoined the track as well, so he's got his problems worked out.
I hope it wasn't another fuel issue for him. Tyler Gore also coming in for a scheduled stop. Just as Mark File exits, Duchesne enters pit lane. File returns P9, it looks like. Wonder if we'll see any drivers respond up towards the top. This is Curlin Andrew, sadly down on 21st after a top 10 certainly looked to be possible for him. Looking at second place, Unger's recovered. He's figured out how to drive the car with the damage that he's got, and he's increased it from 0.6 of a second to 0.9 now over Overbay.
And for the first part of this race, we were so heavily focused on what would the pit strategy look like between Luke and Unger. Well, Unger is going to the pits now, it looks like, so that's going to leave Overbay on track, put him out into second. Behind them, Eric Harmon, his teammate in left side drive racing, is also going to come in from 4th.
All right, so how will this work out for Overbay? He's the one that's got to watch out in terms of Unger coming in and pitting. Does he stay out? We're getting close to the end of that pit window, if we aren't already. In fact, a number of drivers are in. Harmon, Cristelli. Phil Gilman has finished his stop. He's returning to the track. Unger is also out. He comes out in 4th place. And just behind Gilman, who is a lapped car, but otherwise it's relatively clear track ahead of Unger. Nicely done by Phil to obey the blue flags, let Unger by up to where he needs to be. So, our leaders, do they respond? Eric Luke's still out there.
We'll be coming up on pit entry here shortly.
See him coming out of Bilstein through the kink. And the track climbs uphill once more. This is towards the chicane. What an opportunity for the 09 car. He's now coming into pit.
So Overbay coming out of NGK chicane as well, also going to come in.
I think Overbay's really the one we want to watch. He's in a direct fight with David Unger. Unger's stop, 13 seconds stationary. Overbay still looking for his stall. Gritzko also pits.
Unger just now coming through Bilstein. I think this might be an advantage for Overbay, but Overbay's still not in his stall, so maybe not.
Stationary. Overbay stationary. Unger through Coca-Cola. And
Overbay rolling
Luke?
now.
Is Luke? No, Overbay's behind him. Okay, excuse me. I thought for a second that Overbay had jumped Luke, but he's out well ahead, and Unger is out well behind Overbay.
Yeah, Overbay able to jump him there. Gritzko just now coming out of pit exit as well. Ram Ambrosi around him right now. He still has not.
And Overbay had a lightning stop, 11.8 seconds compared to Unger's 13.1. That certainly helped put that 3.5 second gap between himself and the number 19. But Eric Luke, after the pit cycle, is now 5 seconds ahead of Michael Overbay with 11 minutes to go. Dealing with lap traffic of his own. That's David Hebert. He's going by. Hebert yet to pit. In fact, we only have 4 cars left to do that. Ambrosi, Miles, Hebert, and Huxley still need to take scheduled stops.
Yeah, that gap opening up there.
So hard to try and avoid talking about the elephant in the room. It's like a no-hitter. You don't want to talk about Eric Luke. But this is just looking so in his favor right now.
Yeah, it really is. We've talked about how close he's come before, especially that second place this season at Road Atlanta in round 2, falling just shy with David Unger.
Sorry, we had Daniel Barnett with a frightening moment for a number of drivers around him. If we could get a replay on board, this was into turn 1. Barnett down in 18th right now. Really outbraked himself.
Oh, yeah. There was a lot of traffic that was in the footsteps of this action as well.
Let's see, where are we? Okay, so here we go. We'll see it once they get to the front stretch. He is chasing. That is the cars of, looks like Andy Spicer. Michael Overbay actually was in there as well. So Overbay's probably got to be thanking his lucky stars. That's Overbay, you can see going by, trying to put a lap on him. Drifts wide. And then watch down here into the first corner. Thinks he's good on the brakes, but nope, I'm not. Oh dear. Threads the needle all the way off into the grass. Avoids everyone.
That could have been a lot worse for sure.
Well, pit stops are just about done. Hebert and Huxley, the last 2 that we're waiting on. 7th place this battle is Cristelli and Gunderson. They're about 0.8 of a second apart from one another. Gunderson's going to have to hustle a little more if he wants a chance to try and make an overtake. Oh, McLaughlin with a problem. Out of Michelin. Owen McLaughlin finds the wall.
A couple drivers now out of Michelin with problems. That curb is very high in elevation compared to the track there, so really gets the car unsettled. Just all by himself. Looks like Owen spun himself around here.
Correct myself. He did not hit the wall. He came a little close there, but he gets it turned around. That slots him into P12. Let's take a little bit of a rundown real quick, just to remind our viewers where everybody is and what's been happening, because a lot of stories have certainly played out today. Our leader, Eric Luke, started in 2nd, but we've seen this before, except in previous cases, he was being run down by David Unger. He's currently leading by about 7 and almost 8 seconds actually now over Michael Overbay, our current champion. He doesn't seem to have the pace to try to reel in Eric Luke, which bodes well for the 09. Behind him is David Unger, who seems to still be struggling with that damage. Ever since the pit stop, the gap has increased between himself and Overbay, where Michael actually jumped David. And then behind them, it's been a recovery for Christian Gritzko. He sits in P4. He's got it down to 4.5 seconds behind David Unger, but he'll be ruining that one lone mistake he had down into 4 that was very, very costly. Rounding out the top 5, not too far behind Gritzko, so any more mistakes could still drop him down positions, is Mark Feil in the 777. Feil actually started in that 5th position at the start of this race. What's the next 5 look like on the grid?
Yeah, pretty quiet day there for Mark Feil in 5th. He's right now currently ahead of Eric Harmon, who's in 6th. He's been fast all season. Talked a little bit in the pre-race show about him being possibly a threat in the points, but just hasn't quite gotten the pace under that 617 car today. Definitely the slower of the two left side drive racing cars. Back in 6th after starting 4th. He is fending off David Cristelli. He has a huge gap back to him, about 13 seconds, who is having a phenomenal day. We saw him make his debut here in the PRL Radical Racing Series last week at Monza, and he's up to 7th after starting 10th today. Matthew Gunderson, driver with a surprise podium last week after a lot of attrition. He's having another decent day back in 8th, ahead of Tyler Gore and Danny Duchesne, who they both actually ran into some problems on the first lap, but they've both broken into the top 10 as well.
Really, our biggest charger is Paul Wildridge, but he did not put a qualifying time in. He started 21st. He's up to 11th. Other than him, not too many drivers have had dramatic moves in position. Most everybody is close to where they started.
Yeah, it looks like Danny Duchesne would be your next biggest mover. Actually, just as we look at Danny Duchesne, has some trouble.
He's pulled off in the exact same spot that his teammate did.
Very interesting.
And incredibly similar circumstances. What in the world? I've never seen something quite like that in sim racing. This isn't like, as we go to the lead with Eric Luke, this isn't like what we saw with Formula One at Bahrain, where the two Renaults had similar engine issues right next to each other. Cars shouldn't have any sort of engine problems. Oh, I don't know if either of them is listening, but we'd love to talk to you and find out why.
At first I thought he was just losing control, and then it's very, very peculiar.
So let's go to Mark Feil, because, well, he was about a second and some behind Gritzko, but, well, the gap's coming down. I don't know if this is lap traffic. He's got Christopher Richards in front of him, Christian Gritzko now actually backing even farther into Feil.
Yeah, really has closed this gap, Feil has. Definitely is going to be a threat here within a couple of laps. That's all they've got left, but if he can stay with the Gritzko and keep up the pace that they've got going on, it's looking good for Feil to not necessarily get a podium, but to get up there in 4th.
Right on board with Christian. Richard certainly not pulling out of the way immediately. Now he pulls off to the side. Is he going to let both through? He's trying to. Nicely done. There we go. Feil is able to take an unaltered racing line to continue his chase on Christian Gritzko. We've actually only got 13 drivers left on the lead lap with these 2.5 minutes left on the clock. Watch the battle down towards turn 1. Gritzko keeping himself safe. Puts Feil at arm's length. Keep him from making an attack. But now they cycle into the Mercedes arena. There's getting to be fewer opportunities for the 777 to find an overtake somewhere.
Yeah, definitely the closest battle on track right now with just a couple of laps to go. You see Gritzko run wide there. You will actually pick up an off track right there, even though it doesn't look like he's going through any area of track limit.
Tucking it down nice and tight to the apex through Ford. Feil following him though, and he's got it down to 0.3 of a second. Not sure that he'll be close enough to attack into Dunlop. Both cars smoking the tires yet again, trying to push the limit down into that corner. Feil obviously has Christian Gritzko looking in his mirrors, but can Gritzko keep from making any more mistakes this time? He already handed away a potential podium. He's probably going to stay within the top 5 because Harmon is a ways back, but 4th is always better than 5th. Got a little
Also
bit of
a battle for 8th between teammates here. Matthew Gunderson trying to hold off Tyler Gore.
This is about half a second between the two of them, but we just got the white flag. We can stay with this battle. I'm keeping an eye on the leader so that we know when to duck over to him. I can report that we just got information from Danny Duchesne that his stoppage was due to a VR problem. And Christopher Richards has decided to pit. Not sure what the cause of that is.
Might be tight on fuel.
Let's take a look at Gritzko once again, though, for this 4th place battle. They are closing in somewhat on Unger. This is something we haven't considered. That is Unger's pace bad enough that Gritzko actually might slip, or excuse me, Unger might slip off the podium.
They're going to have to push really hard here because they're not going to have many opportunities to do it. Going to have to hustle.
Just half a lap to go, including for our leader, the number 09, as we continue to watch Gritzko try to bring David Unger outside of the podium. It was Overbay that went by when Gritzko was under attack and lost his chance at that. I'm sure he wouldn't mind also putting one over on Unger. But before we'll get to see any of that, we've got to switch to Eric Luke. I said last week was a feel-good story. I'd say this one is an even better feel-good story. Eric Luke, who has been waiting, who has been pushing, trying so hard week after week, finally gets his first win here in the PRL Radical Racing Series. Overbay to 2nd place. Unger just withstanding the pressure to squeak home in a 3rd. Mark Feil. What happened to Gritzko? Gritzko is way behind. Feil gets 4th.
Gritzko just went off the track by himself. Lost it.
Still salvages a top 5. We got a replay here. He's still got some work to do. That win was an excellent one, but 2 driver errors today. Oh yeah, that car snapped on him and he barely kept it out of the barriers.
How many times have we seen his car snap on him like that in the most crucial of situations this season?
Most drivers now cycling in to the start-finish line. No real battles left on the track. So as the 13 cars who are on the lead lap finish up, we're going to take a quick break here on the Global Sim Racing Channel. We'll come back with the unofficial results as well as driver interviews. And on screen, you'll see all the upcoming races here on the GSRC. Welcome back to the Nürburgring. We just watched round 4 here of the PRL Radical Racing Series. This was a pretty good one up towards the front. We had battles for the lead. We had battles for the podium. We had action. And in the end, for Eric Luke, all of his trying, all of his hard work finally paid off. The 09 takes his first victory. Michael Overbay, who continues to try and take his second championship in a row, does good work today himself, going from third to second. Unger in the reverse. He started out on the pole. A little bit of contact really was to blame today for this third place, you have to admit. Unfortunately got some damage from that, and that meant that he couldn't challenge the likes of Overbay. He was almost chased down by Mark Feil, who wound up in fourth, and poor Christian Gritzko. He did go up a position, we should point out, but what was a potential podium wound up only being a top 5 after last week's win. Eric Harmon takes 6th, and David Cristelli, I have to say, continues to impress. This week, he gets 7th. He finishes higher. Once again, on the lead lap, Matthew Gunderson taking 8th, and Tyler Gore finishing 9th. Paul Wildridge, who did not put in a qualifying time and was put at the back of the grid, recovered his way to 10th.
He finishes 17 seconds ahead of the 5 car of Owen McLaughlin, who had issues late in the race. Rem Ambrosi behind him as well in 12th. And the last car in the lead lap going to be Matt Miles in the 14, finishing in 13. A handful of cars finishing 1 lap down. Danny Barnett in 14th. 15th goes to Curlin Andrew. It looks like he made it to the finish, though. Phil Yeoman in 16th. 17th to Chris Richards, David Abair, and Ronald McManus as well. 2 laps down. Back in 20th is going to be Julian Huxley, who had a quiet Shane ran into some problems back 4 laps down in 21st. Andy Spicer 6 laps down in 22nd. And then you get into the DNFs. William Lee in 23rd, and it did not start from Leif Peterson, rounding out the 24-car field at the Nürburgring.
We've got our winner ready to talk to us, Eric Luke, joining us in the booth. And if you don't hear any ducks, any quacking, well, that's because Eric Luke broke his today, finally. Congratulations.
I appreciate it, gentlemen. It feels like a long time coming. It feels good to be up here.
Now, much like what we saw last week with Gritzko, you also had to work hard for this. You and Unger stayed very, very close together, and then you were actually battling him for the lead.
Yeah, when we started off, I got the whole shot going into turn 1, and the track was still really, really slick. And he stayed on me, and I think he passed me. It was either on lap 2 or lap 3, which I was very much fine with. I just kind of wanted to stay with him and try to do something at the pits.
Well, it all worked out in your favor, and obviously you've got one other podium, but a couple bad finishes. We will see drop weeks come into play. I mean, do you consider the Nürburgring one of your stronger tracks?
It's one of my more favorite tracks on the calendar. It has a nice flow to it. I like the hard braking zone going into the final chicane, and nailing turns 3 and 4, getting through there quickly really impacts a lap. So it just feels good when you slam down a solid lap.
And speaking of solid laps, your qualifying has been impressive so far this season, usually up within the front 2 rows. It seems it's always the races that undo things for you. Does this win teach you anything? Do you feel like you've now been able to up your game to where you've got the qualifying and the race down?
I'm hoping. I'm hoping the wins can continue. My qualifying, I do have Overbay to thank for that. We did some testing before the race started, and he helped me with my setup. Got a good draft off of him for the qualifying. But I think what really made a difference this go around was my mistakes were very, very limited as opposed to Road Atlanta, where I lost to Unger. I just made entirely too many mistakes that round. So this one I kept it a lot cleaner.
Well, I'd say you deserve this victory, sir. Congratulations once again. Go have some champagne.
I appreciate it, gentlemen. Thank you very much.
Eric Luke, our winner today from the front row on the grid. Up next, we've got Nick ready to talk to Overbay.
Yeah, absolutely. Coming in this season, trying to go 2 in a row. in the PRL Radical Racing Series. Try to get that crown again, but comes up just short today, finishing second.
How are you guys doing? Congratulations, Eric Luke. I'm so happy for him, his first win here on the PRL League. I'm just really excited he finally got it. Congratulations to Eric. He did a great job as well.
That's awesome to hear. The sportsmanship between everyone. Everyone seems pretty excited for Eric, as well as we were pretty hyped up to see him finally get that win. But Michael, talk about your race today. Started third and kind of quietly made your way forward past David after you caught him.
Oh, I screwed the pooch at the start. I put the wrong setup in, and I had the wrong gearbox in it. So I was just kind of hanging on for dear life and used all my fuel. And only thing I could do was try to find someone to stay around and draft a little bit. But so I was staying behind Gritzko till he made a mistake and drafting him. And then I had to push to try to catch up with David, caught up with him a little bit, and tried to save a little bit of fuel behind him a little bit so I could make a race without losing it all in the pits.
We saw some pretty hot track temperatures today. Lots of guys struggling with grip, and it's already a track that's hard to pass at. Was that a big struggle for you today, just keeping the car in one piece, getting to the end?
Yeah, exactly right. Whenever it gets warmer and the track gets, I don't know, it's so weird about this track because at the end of the stint, boy, it just really starts to lose a lot of grip. But car setup wasn't too bad, grip-wise, but just the lap times just come down. So it wasn't too bad bringing it home at the end.
Yeah, you played it off well, definitely. Looked pretty fast there nonetheless, getting a second place finish. So when are we going to see you back in victory lane this year? I haven't seen that yet this year.
I don't know. I just have not had time to practice or anything, but yeah, hopefully soon. Well, I would like to say thanks to Alpine Stars, Geodesic Racing, GoPro for the support that they give me, and I also want to say congratulations to Eric again and Mark for a fourth place finish.
All right, well, congratulations on your second place finish, and hopefully we'll be able to talk to you once again in the next coming week.
Good job, guys. Take care.
And that was Michael Overbay, second place finisher. David Unger, third place finisher, is now with us, and he's 3 for 4 for podiums. Most drivers would be ecstatic at that, but David, do you feel good about this race? It seemed a little disappointing considering the pole and the pace that you had.
Yeah, Joe. No, look, it is what it is. Podium is a podium. I wish I could have done better. I, in fact, surprised myself that I got pole and that I was leading. But I made a mistake that allowed Eric to pass me. And then I got held up in lap traffic. And that was the end of that. But no, happy with third.
Next week, we're going over to Canada for a track that is probably more hard to pass than what we've got here at the Nürburgring. Very, very fast circuit. What do you consider your skills over there? Is that one that you usually fare well at?
I don't know whether I should reveal that. It's my favourite track, and yes, I do seem to go fairly well there, so I'm looking forward to it.
Ooh, so some foreboding news for the rest of the drivers, considering how fast you've been this season. All in all, though, today it was a pretty exciting race. How would you rate this one in terms of of your iRacing races so far?
Well, let's see. I've got a second, a first, and now a third. So I'd probably rate a third.
I think that sounds fair. Well, congratulations on another podium, sir. We hope to see you in Canada.
Thanks very much, Joe.
That was David Unger from Down Under, third place today here at the Nürburgring. And it's going to close up our interviews and the rest of our show, of course. We want to thank Dream Vacations for sponsoring this season once more. You can find them at travelwithanangel.com if you want help with planning your vacation. They are your place to go to. Also, a thank you goes out to iRacing for putting us on the iRacing Esports Network. All you got to do to get IESN in your feed is click the subscribe button. on their YouTube page, and then you'll find all of the PRL Radical Racing series from this season on your YouTube feed. Thanks to the companies that provide the software and hardware for our broadcast listed here on your screen. And additional thanks go to June Lalonde, who provides our wonderful music. See the screen for how to get a hold of more of her great work. Thanks to the team today, Nick, Sean, and Dougie. If you'd like to find out more about GSRC, including upcoming races, you can find it at globalsimracingchannel.com. You can also check us out on social media. We're on Twitter at GSR Channel, Facebook at Global Sim Racing Channel, and Instagram at GSRC_Graham. As we mentioned, going to Mosport for the next round. Hopefully we don't have too much attrition there, because that is a punishing track, especially in these cars. That'll be Thursday, April 18th at 9 p.m. Eastern. We also have upcoming races for other series listed on the screen, so check those out and mark them down on your calendar. But until next time, race clean, race hard. We'll see you on the track.